Well, hi folks, today I wanted to talk to you about portable hard drives for filmmaking. I've had this question a number of times about what's the best hard drive to buy, because it can be very confusing. There are so many different types on the market and at quite different price points. But what I want you to do for you today was actually show you the hard drives that I use and explain my criteria for the hard drives that I choose and why I make those decisions. There are several considerations. If we're going to look at different types of hard drives, you've got hard drives you'll use on location to back up your footage. And then there's hard drives that you'll use to edit from. Now, there are very different machines. Let's start with location drives. I use two main brands on location. I use G-Tech G-Safes and I use S.C.A.L.E rugged drives. Now these are just really, they call them rugged drives. All hard drives in actual fact are pretty rugged when they're switched off. You can drop any of these and they probably won't damage the disk. Not suggesting you should throw them around, but the difference with these is they have a rubber bounce on them, so I guess if this bounces it won't crack the edges, whereas this one might do. But let me talk to you about the importance of looking after your hard drives. When they're switched off, they're all pretty durable, but when they're switched on, there's a reader that's hovering over the disk which is spinning very fast. And so for some reason people have a tendency to want to pick these drives up because they think they're very rugged. When a hard drive is spinning, it's really not all that rugged at all. So you need to be very careful when a hard drive is actually up to speed that you don't move it around. So, two different brands. I use S.C.A.L.E for a lot of backing up on location. Just happen to have used them and had touchwood, pretty good experience with them. My absolute favorites are these G-Tech G-Safes. These can be configured in two types of RAID. Now RAID is a method of protecting your storage data. I can use this in either RAID 1 or RAID 0. Now RAID 1 is the equivalent of having two drives physically inside the casing. So there's like two small hard drives in this device here. And RAID 1 is when the data is getting written to both drives simultaneously. So in effect what you've got is two virtual copies or physical copies of your virtual data in one casing. And that means if one drive fails, you can actually recover the data and read it to the second drive. The other way you can use these drives is for editing. And if you've backed up your data and it's secure, what you can do is copy data onto another drive and set it to RAID 0. Now RAID 0 is when the data, there's still two hard drives, but the data's written to two drives and it splits the data half and half on each drive. And that means that the read and write speed becomes a lot faster when you're editing. The other thing I like about these G-Tech drives, and it's a small thing, but they tend to come in a pouch. Now this is just a single G-Tech drive, so this is the equivalent of one of these. Let's look at connectivity next, what the differences are. There are two aspects you need to be aware of when buying hard drives, particularly if you're going to edit with them. One is the protection it offers, so is it RAID 1 or RAID 0? And the second thing is the connectivity. Now, both of these drives will power using the bus power in the Firewire connections and the USB connections. But the G-Tech drive also has the ability to power externally as well, as does the S.C.A.L.E. The smallest connection is your USB connection. That's one of these cables here. And USB, I'm sure you're all familiar with. There's USB, mini USB and large USB. USB is pretty useless when it comes to video editing because it's just not fast enough to transfer the data. So if you try doing any sort of video editing, it might be fine for stills, but any sort of video editing, I think it's about 220 megabytes a second, so it's very slow, and the video files, especially in HD, tend to be very large. So the minimum I would think about using for video editing is Firewire 400, which is 480 megabits a second, so it's twice as fast as USB. But in actual fact, my general go-to connection for Firewire drives is actually this drive here, this connection here, which is Firewire 800. and that gives you 800 megabits a second. And that's generally fast enough for location mobile editing. The next connection up from that, and not all drives have this, is SATA, and that's much, much faster still. In actual fact, this drive here is a 1 terabyte LaCie drive. It's not RAID protected, it's just a single drive in there, but you can connect that via, rather oddly, either USB or SATA, and SATA will give you a far faster throughput of data than anything else. Apart from Thunderbolt, this new connection called Thunderbolt will give you very, very fast data. They claim 10 times faster than Firewire 800. I've actually got a Thunderbolt drive here running off the iMac, and it's pretty fast. It's a Promise RAID, and they're very, very good. And the great thing is you can daisy chain those drives. But I've invested heavily in computers that have Firewire connections, and so I'm having to slowly replace these drives with Thunderbolt drives. I want to just talk about this drive on the end. This is a G-Speed 4 terabyte eSATA drive. Now this only connects via eSATA, and this offers you even further increased levels of RAID. You can connect, configure this up to RAID 6 if you wanted to. This is very, very much an edit drive for back at your edit base. You can run it off a laptop with a connector that goes into, if you have a eSATA connection. On my MacBook Pro 17-inch, I have a eSATA to express card adapter, which means I can run that off that. But we'll come back to edit drive in another video. Really, it comes down to two decisions. One is the speed of the connection, and the second one is the actual physical speed of the drive. Some of these drives will run at 7,200 revolutions per minute, and some will run at 5,600 revolutions per minute. The faster the drive, the faster it will read and write the data. So for optimum editing and transfer of your data, what you want to do is have as fast a drive as you possibly can and as fast a connection. So I would say that your minimum really for video editing and backing up video files, HD video files on location, is a Firewire 800 connection and a 7,200 RPM drive. And really, and I'm not endorsed in any way by G-Tech, I've been using these drives for years. I find them to be very, very good. Great connectivity. You've got an eSATA connection here. You've got Firewire 800, so what you can do is loop through. If you're transferring compact flash cards, for example, from your DSLR, you might want to plug a compact flash card Firewire 800 reader. I know that Lexar make one, into here, and then, in fact, I've got one. Just here. This is a Lexar Firewire 800 reader, and what you can do is connect your Firewire cable from the drive into the adapter, and especially if your computer's only got one Firewire connector, you can then connect the Firewire cable into the computer and loop through one of these and read your cards via the computer onto the drives. So that's very, very important. So just to recap here, I like these little G-Tech drives because they come in a pouch, which means all your cabling can sit in the back of the pouch here. It keeps things nice and tidy when you're on the road. I've always thought these are great value. I've got, as you can see, quite a number of them. The one thing you have to be mindful of is managing your data, and that's a whole different video actually on how to manage your files, because you end up, and if you're anything like me, with lots and lots and lots of files, lots and lots of drives, and you end up buying bigger and bigger drives to back everything up onto. Just before we finish up, this is a larger version of this. A bit dusty there, it's just been sitting under my edit drive there on my bay. This is a larger version of this. This is a 1 terabyte version, and this has, it's a bit older, this one. This is Firewire 400, Firewire 800, and USB. I have a newer one which is 2 terabytes, which has Firewire 800 and eSATA. So, to summarize this, when buying hard drives, you need to think about your connectivity of your system, the speed of the hard drive, and the connectivity that you have on here, and also what level of protection you want for your data. Are you just backing up files for archive, or are you actually going to edit from those drives as well? So a little bit of a selection there. I hope that's been useful to you. Post any questions you have below, and at some point I'll do a video in the future about how to manage your data and the workflow I use for taking my rushes from these drives into edit and into archive, because there's some interesting options there as well. Okay folks, thanks very much. See you next time.